Thank you so much for coming out, and I really love doing this conference. It's always an honor and a pleasure. As always, thanks to Leah, Travis, Adam, for all you do, the terrific staff. You're just the best. Thanks to the class that I'm teaching for making the experience such a pleasure, despite the nerves. Vanessa as a co-teacher is fantastic. I'm just very grateful to be here. I mentioned, if you were at the craft lecture I gave early in the week, that I have a novel that is hanging in submission purgatory, and I'm going to read from that novel. The title is The End and the End, which is a little difficult to say, so maybe I should rethink it. It is, I'm going to read from the first chapter, so you're beginning at the beginning. I will mention, though, that the first half of the book and the portion that I'm reading from is set in 1999, and location eventually would become probably clear, but it's in Kentucky. So I'll start reading, chapter 1. Kristen said no the first time her roommate asked her to come along on the overnight trip to her boyfriend's father's farm. She said no the second time, too. But then Jenny started begging, and Kristen found herself, predictably, wavering. It's this weird thing, Jenny said, where Cody practically hates his dad, but also wants his approval, like, bad. And they basically didn't even see each other for 2 years, but I guess they're trying again? I don't know. It's going to be so weird and so uncomfortable. I need you. Please, pretty please, I'll give you $1 million, she said, a well-trod inside joke between them. This was new to Kristen, having friends like Jenny, having inside jokes. So now they were making the drive to Cody's father, who lived northwest of Bowling Green, in Egypt, Cody had said, with exasperation. Pretty out here, gently rolling hills, woods, none of the bland stretches of churned-up farmland that span the highway back toward her own parents' place in Russellville. Cody and Jenny's woven fingers lay easy on the armrest, their pretty forearms still light summer brown. Cody had his free wrist dropped over the top of the steering wheel. Jenny was turning the pages in his huge CD album. You have the most random shit, she said affectionately. Merle Haggard? Merle's the man, Cody said. He caught Kristen's eye in the rearview mirror. Isn't that right, Chris? I have no idea who that is, she admitted, and he grinned at her. Last year, she wouldn't have had the courage to confess this to Cody. She would have smiled her tight smile, lips closed, and shrugged noncommittally. Country music, Jenny said. She looked over her shoulder at Kristen and mugged a disgusted face. You pick, Chris. She passed the album back one-handed, awkwardly, and Kristen accepted its weight with a grunt. How'd you get so many CDs, she asked. Random was right. There were hundreds here tucked into sleeves, thousands of dollars worth probably, arranged by what Kristen assumed was frequency of use and carefully matched with their liner notes. Kristen hooked Blues Traveler 4 with her index finger, unbuckled her seatbelt, and leaned into the front, inserting it into the CD player herself. I joined Columbia House and BMG, then I canceled and signed up under both my stepbrothers' names, and then I forgot to cancel and they sent me Celine Dion. He laughed. My heart will go on, Jenny moaned satirically. Kristen supposed Jenny hadn't told Cody about how she and Kristen had watched Titanic once in the theater and then all 3 times they caught it on the campus cable network, both sobbing when Jack met his frosty end again, again, and again in the dark waters of the Atlantic. John Popper's emphatic harmonica strains drifted from the speakers, and some of the dread Kristen had been feeling started to dissipate. This was good road trip music, even if the drive was only about 40 minutes, and October was Kristen's favorite month. It had been disappointingly warm today, temperature up to almost 80, but the forecast called for an overnight drop into the low 40s. She was already wearing her favorite soft gray sweater, and her other favorite sweater, the moss green, was packed in her duffel bag. The maples passing by her window were red and orange. She could smell, through her cracked window, the fragrance, both pleasant and not, of burning leaves. "So, what's the deal with your dad?" she asked Cody. "I'm not going to be able to answer that," Cody said. "I never have a clue what his deal is." "He's like a wilderness dude, right?" Jenny said. She'd slipped off her clogs and put her feet, which were incongruously large and indelicate in a way that never failed to charm Kristen, up on the dashboard. She was wearing her lucky socks, Kristen saw, the ones printed with ladybugs. Cody scoffed. "He wishes." "I thought you said he was a farmer," Kristen said to Jenny. "Not really," Cody replied. He popped the turn signal, and a more secluded back road ribboned off ahead of them. "He has a big garden and some chickens. He grows a little weed, but he doesn't sell it." "Your dad grows marijuana?" This was a lot to process. Kristen's own father called the skateboarders who hung out in the Bethel Shopping Center parking lot dopeheads, and her mother spoke with cold, final dismissal about the teenager down the street who had been caught with a joint folded between the pages of his World Civ textbook. He had been such a good kid, she said, making it clear that his goodness was lost now. "Just a little for his own use. I think he does it mostly because he doesn't like being told he can't." Kristen tried to make herself feel cool about this, casual in the way Cody was being casual about it. "Don't worry," Cody said. "He'll share with us." That wasn't what she was worried about, but she smiled her tight smile and nodded noncommittally. "Quit it. You know Kristen doesn't smoke," Jenny said. From another person, this might have come across like an insult, a tease. Jenny stated it as a fact, devoid of judgment, inflected only with a slightly protective note that Kristen resisted, even as she felt a swell of gratitude in her center. "Well, there's a first time for everything," Kristen said. "But you do whatever you're comfortable with, you hear? It's just us tonight. You've got nobody to impress. And I probably won't smoke either." Cody lifted a skeptical brow at her. "I'm serious. It's your dad. I'm worried enough as it is. I don't want him thinking less of me." "First off," Cody said, "why would he offer you something he uses and then look down on you for accepting it? That would be fucked up. Second, you really shouldn't care what my dad thinks of you. My dad's not in a position to judge anybody." "Why?" Kristen asked. "What's wrong with him?" Cody shook his head in a way that might have been angry or might have been amused. "Like I said, I really can't answer for my dad. You'll just have to meet him. Tell me what you think after tonight's done, Chris. He's something else." "Like what, a redneck?" "That wouldn't be something else around here. That would be the same old thing." Jenny craned her neck for another look at Kristen. "Cody told me his dad thinks the world's about to end," she said. Cody unhooked his hand from Jenny's temporarily to swat her shoulder. "Hey, you're giving away the surprise. I wanted to see your face when Dad started up on Y2K. "He thinks it's going to be bad?" Kristen asked. She had been a child who woke her parents in the night, not about monsters under her bed, but the possibility of earthquakes, tornadoes, acid rain, deadly viruses. Cody's eye roll was framed in the rearview mirror. "He claims, but honestly, he's always been like this, since before Y2K was even a thing. It's one of the reasons my mom divorced him." "So why are we spending fall break with him?" Kristen asked. "Great question," Jenny said. Her tone was still playful, but Kristen could sense the genuine note of anxiety behind it. "He's still my dad." Cody kept his eyes trained on the road this time. "He has his good qualities, a few, and I want him to meet Jenny. It's time." A tendon on Jenny's wrist jumped as she squeezed Cody's hand. This was echoed by another little squeeze in Kristen's chest. Her middle-of-the-night worries occasionally shifted away from natural disasters and school stress and toward the question of what this Cody-related squeeze in her heart might mean. Crushes were a habit for her by now. She developed them quickly, nurtured them for as long as they could entertain her. When she was grabbing lunch at the Calf, her crush was on the curly-haired, romantically hook-nosed student worker, his Adidas Sambas perched insolently on the rungs of his bar stool, who scanned student IDs with poignant aloofness. When she was in her Thursday intro to philosophy, it was for the guy with blonde highlights and pastel Tommy polo shirts, who nonetheless wowed the professor with his earnest insights on Plato's cave and Descartes' proof of God. When she thought about these crushes, she thought about the kind of girl she would be with each of them, alternative and Converse, eyes traced in a magic marker thick band of black eyeliner, executing inspired plays on a PlayStation game, New England prep in corduroys and a green pea coat, sipping cappuccino at a corner table in Café Voltaire. She didn't think she had a crush on Cody. She knew the kind of girl Cody liked, the kind of girl she wasn't, Jenny. Jenny was more outgoing than Kristen, but had a harder time academically. She went for runs every morning and bypassed the Chick-fil-A counter to go to the salad bar, but she sometimes looked with longing at the chocolate chip cookie or dish of vanilla ice cream Kristen carried on her tray. Her favorite music was whatever was topping the charts on TRL, but she was honest and loyal and a straight shooter, a better friend in lots of ways than Kristen's high school BFF had been. And Kristen knew what a date with Cody would be like because she tagged along on so many of the ones he had taken with Jenny. She had watched the movies, Office Space, his choice, Varsity Blues, Jenny's, eaten the grinders at Mancino's, watched the two of them bicker and giggle over games of mini golf. The only reason she had cause to hang out so often with Cody was because he and Jenny were kind enough to include her, to make her feel like they enjoyed her company and weren't just treating her as a charity case. What Kristen longed for, she had decided, wasn't Cody himself, but the kind of relationship he and her roommate had made together in their year of dating. She wanted this kind of quiet but powerful declaration of attachment. It's time. Sometimes this seemed like way too much to ask. She didn't think she was objectively a much worse catch than Jenny, but Jenny seemed somehow to be the kind of girl who could expect the universe to offer her love, and Kristen felt, irrationally, powerfully, that she was not. Cody was slowing, signaling not at a road, but a gravel drive marked by a rusted mailbox slumped forward at a 45-degree angle. Jenny turned the stereo off and bounced in her seat a little. "I'm so nervous," she said. "Nothing to be nervous about," Cody replied, but Kristen thought that he too was anxious, maybe on Jenny's behalf, maybe on his own. The gravel drive wound through woods thick enough and deep enough that the house wasn't visible until they'd gone around two bends. When she saw it, Kristen was pleasantly surprised. What had she expected? The vague picture in her head had been of a cobwebby hermit's cabin, maybe surrounded by barbed wire, but this was a tidy two-story A-frame with a metal roof and structural beams stained reddish-brown. It had been built on a little rise, and there wasn't a lawn to speak of. The gravel road terminated at a large garage, and almost everything else between the house and the surrounding woods appeared to have been planted with something, a proliferation of trapezoidal beds, all different sizes and configurations, walled off by chicken wire fencing and connected with narrow, mulch-strewn paths. Cody pulled in behind a red GMC pickup truck and cut the engine. "Well, we're here," he said into the sudden silence. Jenny reached into the backseat floorboard to grab her purse. "No shit." "I'm just glad I can bring such a nice girl home to Papa," Cody said. They leaned together for a kiss, and Kristen took the opportunity to slip out of the car. Yeah, his dad's place was actually pretty cute. He'd painted his front door bright yellow, and large red chrysanthemums were blooming next to the picture window. She could make out, close to the tree line, what she thought must be beehives, several white boxes with pulls like the kind you saw in file cabinets, all built on small platforms. Beyond them, peeking from behind the house, was a large glass greenhouse that made her think of the hand that rocks the cradle. A high-pitched squeal vibrated off the garage door, and Kristen jumped. After the initial shock of it, she realized that she was hearing some kind of a power tool. Cody pressed his car door shut and scrutinized the house with his hands on his hips. The whine of the tool stopped, and Cody said into the silence, figures he would hole up in his shop with his headphones on right at the time I told him we were coming. The garage's side door opened. A man emerged, wiping his hands on a shop cloth. "I can hear you just fine," he said. He went up to Cody and, to Kristen's surprise, pulled him forward gently by the back of his head and kissed him on his crown. Then he ruffled Cody's hair. Cody, at a little over 6 feet tall, had a couple inches on his father, but his posture had gone submissive, boyish. "You okay, son? School okay?" "Yeah," Cody said. "All good. Yeah. Oh, hey, this is Jenny. I told you about her." Cody pulled Jenny forward by the elbow, and she flapped her free hand awkwardly in hello. "Hey, so nice to meet you, sir. Cody's told me a lot about you." "I bet he has," the man said, grinning. "I'm Stephen. Please call me Stephen." "Sure," Jenny said. "I will." "And who's this?" Stephen said, turning now to Kristen. A strange thing happened then. Something about the new angle, presenting her with her first clear, head-on view of his face. Something to do with the sharpening of her focus now that the conversation had moved in a direction that required certain social niceties, given that Kristen would be spending the night under his roof. And another something, which had to do with the way she saw him seeing her, really noticing her, and not just looking at her. The result was that he shifted in a blink from a father who warranted only polite pleasantries, a stranger to be endured for the night as a favor to her friend, into a person who aroused her curiosity. His eyes were a pale, almost eerie, grayish green. He appeared to be a lot younger, or at least a lot more youthful than her own father, and her father, in his late 50s, was gray-haired and paunchy, with watery, wide-set eyes that slightly bulged above the slack planes of his cheeks. Cody's dad, Stephen, had brownish blonde hair, a little overdue for a trim, and a strong jawline, faintly stubbled. He wore a plaid flannel shirt folded up on his forearms and tucked into canvas work pants. His tool belt was cinched around slim hips, and no bulge of belly hung out over it. Cody was dark-haired and dark-eyed, and Kristen didn't think she would recognize them as father and son if she hadn't known to. They had the same full bottom lip, the same small ears. Those were the only obvious physical commonalities. "I'm Jenny's roommate," Kristen said. Without thinking, she offered to shake. "Kristen, they let me come along so I wouldn't be alone for the break." He grasped her hand. His warm palm was thickly muscled, the touch oddly intimate. She hadn't realized a palm could be muscular. "Well, you're welcome here, for what it's worth." He waved dismissively at the property. "It's just me and the squirrels." "That must be why you're so squirrely," Cody said with forced cheer. "Probably so." Stephen grinned, his pale eyes flickering, and Kristen realized she had inexplicably caught a dose of Jenny's nervousness. Cody wasn't her boyfriend. She had no obligation to win this man's approval, and yet, for some reason, she wanted it. "Let's get your bags in," Stephen said, "and then you can help me get a bonfire going, Cody. I had a tree come down in the last storm." "You can't use the wood?" "I salvaged some, and I'll save some back for the wood stove, but there's a lot of rot, and I've got scraps from the shop to burn up." He went to the trunk of Cody's Nissan and insisted on taking all the bags, including Kristen's old black duffel printed with marching panthers. He lifted them easily, pinning hers between his elbow and hip, and getting the other two carry-on-style suitcases by the handles. "You pack light," he said to Kristen. "I like that." "How'd you know it was my bag?" she asked. He winked. Lucky guess. This seemed to maybe be an insult to Jenny, and Kristen could see in a glance that she was processing it as such. But then Stephen said with courtly tenderness, "If you could get the front door, Jenny, I'd be obliged." She rushed to the door gratefully. The inside of the house was, like the outside, cluttered but not messy. The downstairs was open concept, with an island dividing the kitchen from the living room. A half-dozen copper-bottom pots hung from hooks over the island, and something good-smelling was simmering on the stove, spaghetti sauce maybe, or chili. Stephen had books everywhere, crammed into several built-in bookcases, with horizontally placed books fitted into the narrow spaces between the vertically placed books and the next shelf. stacked on the coffee table and end tables, spread out on the kitchen table. She scanned some of the titles as he led them to the staircase, but she didn't recognize any of the author names. Wendell Berry, Aldo Leopold, Thomas Merton, John Crow Ransom. The books all had serious, sturdy covers, and she knew without further evidence that their contents would be serious and sturdy as well. Another thing she knew without being told was that Stephen had built the bookcases, the tables, and the staircase handrail. The wood sliding with satin smoothness under her palm had been stripped and buffed to a dull glow, but left with its natural whorls and ridges. I put fresh sheets on the guest bed, he told Cody and Jenny, setting their suitcases just inside the door to a neat room with a full-size iron bed dressed in an old-fashioned white Chanel spread and a rag rug. Kristen, you'll stay in my room. But where will you sleep, she asked. My couch downstairs folds out, he said, but you'll want the bed. It's more comfortable. I can't take your bed, Kristen said. I wouldn't feel right about it. And I wouldn't feel right about you doing otherwise. Since you're under my roof, I win. He laughed, and here was another echo of Cody. Or she supposed Cody would have to be the echo. Either way, she heard the son and the father's laugh, and she laughed too and put up her hands in surrender. Okay, your house, your rules. Glad that's decided. Besides, I'll probably be up half the night in my shop. I don't sleep much when I've got a project going. What are you working on, Stephen? Jenny asked eagerly. I got a commission for a set of kitchen cabinets at a house in Bowling Green. They're doing a lot of building over there, and I keep getting asked to bid on jobs, but most of them won't pay me what I'm worth. They all just want the same thing everyone else has, and they want it for cheap. They can go to Lowe's and get the Golden Oak Special for half of what I have to charge. But you did get a job, Cody said. A note of impatience had crept into his voice. Yeah, this one's okay. Matter of fact, he's a professor at Western. I'm hoping it'll lead to some other work. Those are the ones you want to get in with, the college people. They move here from the coast and can't believe how cheap the houses are. Anyway, he seemed to realize they were all penned in the dark, narrow hallway between rooms, and he was blocking the path back downstairs. You made the mistake of getting me started, Jenny. I'll try not to run my mouth all night. I don't get a lot of company. Oh, you're fine, Jenny said. I find this all really interesting. That's kind of you, he said, and he gave Kristen another little wink. This one's so fast, she nearly missed it. All right, you all settle in, make yourself at home. Cody, come down when you're ready to give me a hand. Sound good? Yep, Cody said, fine with me. I'm happy to help too, Stephen, Jenny said. I'm sturdier than I look. Kristen braced herself for some cheerful chauvinism, something like her father would say, you girls gossip while the men work. But Stephen only said, sure, the more the merrier. They watched him descend and waited for the front door to close. Then they looked at each other. Shit, maybe he wanted some father-son time. Maybe I shouldn't have said I'd help. You're overthinking it, Cody said. Do you think he likes me? Sure, he does, as much as he likes anybody. She bit her bottom lip and nodded. But you might want to change your clothes if you're going to help, Cody said. Jenny looked down at her outfit and then up anxiously at Kristen, as if Kristen had been the one to fail to anticipate this complication. She wore a blue cardigan set embroidered with little daisies at the neck, green velour boot-cut pants, and brown leather clogs, her chin-length blonde hair pinned back on both sides with little matching daisy barrettes. I only brought clothes like this. I didn't know I was going to be doing manual labor. You didn't have to do manual labor. You volunteered. Because I want your dad to like me. Chill out, Kristen said. I've got jeans and a pair of tennis shoes in my bag. The pants will be okay if you belt the waist. Thank God you're here, Chris. She dropped down to unzip Chris's duffel and emerged with the jeans, the shoes, and also the soft green sweater. Kristen hadn't meant to offer it, didn't really think it was any more labor appropriate than Jenny's cardigan set, but it was fine. Kristen could wear what she had on now again tomorrow. No one would care or probably even notice. Jenny sprang up and kissed Kristen's cheek. You're my absolute favorite, she said. Are you going to help too or hang out? Heck no, I'm not helping, Kristen said, thinking but not saying that she didn't want to get her only remaining outfit dirty. Then she added with too much feeling, like you said, I've got no one to impress. Jenny and Cody retreated to the guest room to change, and Kristen stepped into Stephen's bedroom. What a weird thing to do, sleeping in a stranger's bedroom, his bed. She set her duffel, now almost empty, on an old-fashioned ladder-back chair pushed up next to the dresser. The dresser top was dusted and organized. There was a small enamel plate upon which lay a thick gold ring and an old-fashioned gold-tone watch with an elastic band, a bifold leather wallet with bulging stitches, a bottle of cologne half full called Aramis. She pulled the brass cap off and sniffed, expecting something like her father's skin bracer, but it was a subtler scent, layered, woodsy, nice. Here, too, were books, a stack of 7 or 8 on the bedside table, each with folds of paper placed at different points among the pages. She sat on the bed's edge, took the top book off the stack, and tugged the brass pull chain on the lamp, illuminating the late afternoon room in caramel-colored light. The End and the Beginning, an optimist meditation on societal collapse. She let the book fall open to where it was marked with a piece of college-ruled paper. Some notations were written on the paper in a heavy, close hand, the letters formed so precisely they could have been a word font. Tech dependence equals new feudalism. Vigilance against data collection is key. No practical systems of sustainability. Technology cannot advance at rate necessary to incentivize alternative energy. Mass extinction event inevitable 2010 to 2050. Increased resistance to antibiotics, prion diseases from contaminated meat supplies, rising oceans, viral variants. Page 89. Kristen flipped back to page 89 and found this passage underlined. The key to survival, Walsh argues, may well be to view these existential threats as part of the planet's self-regulatory system, which prioritizes the health of smaller populations of diverse life forms over the perpetuation of fewer, exponentially increasing populations of inferior life forms. Disquieted, she pressed the book shut and placed it carefully on the stack where she had found it, turned off the lamp, then lay back and let her head settle on Stephen's pillow. The bed didn't smell like fresh laundry. It smelled nicely lived in and very, very masculine. There was the lingering scent of some unfussy detergent, a whiff of the Aramis, an autumnal tinge of wood smoke, and something like pipe tobacco. The smells comforted her. She nestled in deeper, lulled by the quiet, the distance from school, its stresses and disappointments. Without intending to, she went to sleep. Thank you. And please welcome Cortney Lamar Charleston.
How y'all doing? Good evening, good evening. It is an immense honor to be here. And so I guess before I get into these poems, I'll start with gratitude. So thank you first to Leah, to Adam, to Travis, to the entire staff who make this conference, this gathering of luminaries possible. Thank you to everyone here who has traveled from far and wide to be here, who make this conference purposeful. And special shout out to my and Nate's workshop group, who have been amazing. Y'all have been extremely generous to us and generous with each other. And you've made this time together so worthwhile, so thank y'all very much. Tonight, I'm gonna read some poems from my forthcoming collection titled It's Important I Remember, that will be out from Northwestern University Press in February. Thank you. And I probably won't talk too much between the poems. I'll probably just try to mostly read straight through, but I will preface a little bit at the start. So, two things I wanted to note. So first and foremost, it's important I remember that title is important, no pun intended, because it appears as an incantation or a refrain in the title of every individual poem or sequence in the book. So over the course of this reading tonight, you will hear it multiple times. So I'm just gonna give you that fair warning. But the nice thing about it is you always know when the next poem's starting, so there you go. And then the other thing I wanted to note quickly about it was kind of a brief note on its origins. It began kind of percolating in the first administration of our American despot. And I think what really triggered it for me were a lot of the confrontations and flashpoints we were having around memorials and sites of memory and myth-making within this country. And what it, made me realize and made me think about and reminded me was how important it is for an autocratic movement, an autocratic regime to rewrite what has happened to permit what happens next, right? So against that backdrop, and in order to resist it, I found myself clinging and going and diving back into the past and refusing to relinquish the truth as I understand it, because I felt that was prerequisite to refusing to relinquish the present, which is prerequisite to refusing to relinquish the future. And so that's the inspiration of the entire project. So just wanted to note that. And then I'll read from the collection across different parts of the book, and then I'll close with two newer, shorter poems. How's that sound? All right. All right. So since we are in Tennessee, and I find myself within the boundaries of what used to be called the Confederacy, maybe it's only right that I start by reading a poem evoking Abraham Lincoln, who, I don't know, maybe in certain spaces might be a bit of a boogeyman, but hey. All right. It's important I remember that Abraham Lincoln always measured before he cut, saying less for now about the steady hand holding the pen of proclamation and presidential address, saying more of the one wrapped around the axe handle that brought the head down straight and split the rails, that built the fence which became the border, that separated the civilized from those they labeled savage, and created farmland from their land, which Abe labored on for no payment except for his father's admonishment, while living on the frontier of difficult feelings, eyes forever full of mood and storm. Say more of the man of lithe stature, who was too small in status to perjure himself before the public, of the candidate who was common enough to be a trustworthy steward over the common interest as far as working men saw it. Say more of the sense of duty and command he had, of his executive competence and sense of determination. See, I can indulge a good myth made of a mortal man up until the point it makes myth of me as well, when my thanks are invited implicitly in every retelling of his story for a piece of paper that cut around electoral edges, that freed my forebears as battle tactic to spare a fiction grand enough for people to keep dying for in perpetuity. He would save the Union without freeing any slave if he could, the president wrote to Horace Greeley with hallmark honesty. Without any slaves, it wouldn't have been possible to save it, and without any slaves, it wouldn't have needed saving. The war between states and their stated ideals made moot. So say more of the price paid to refortify the foundation of a house that is burning now because it didn't fall back then. Say more on prudence when insistence is the only righteous option. Say more about what happens when common men have a measure of control in their leathered hands, ink and parchment, blade and hilt. It's important I remember that journalism is the first draft of history. And Ida B. Wells, well, frustrated the engenderment of the official record, crisscrossed the country interviewing poplars that had been accessories to atrocities, not unlike that which felled her dear friend Thomas Moss in Memphis, what became the linchpin to her crusade, though he specifically never dangled from a wooden limb like natural confections scanned for bruises in the produce section of People's Grocery. There is no justice here, he's believed to have said before being proven correct, after the mob descended on his jail cell with cocked weapons, wearing black masks, blacker even than those that frame ivory teeth trained to curvature by the terror of sudden swings in white men's temperament. Teeth, it was told around town after town, that rot from the sugar of white women, sugar that black men steal, which makes the bloodshed that much sweeter, worth snapping necks for like stalks of sugar cane, to say nothing of the black woman left hanging at all. The big lie looms large over the ripening fruits, standing on their porches with shotguns loaded, or with luggage packed, prepared to spread wing and fly before they're flown up the bark of a tree, with hounds nipping at their heels and bubs flashing for the morning newspapers, where it would read that a dangerous deviant was sentenced to death by a coalition of concerned citizens, a red record printed authoritatively in black until a black woman, Ida B., took her proverbial red pen to the horrid story and made history retract its initial word on the subject, though not its inherent threat, which is set in Tombstone. It's important I remember that Nina Simone wrote Mississippi Goddamn in less than 1 hour. And she meant every word. At times, the lyric is insistent, an immaculate conception, which is to say, perhaps, that urgency is the one true God we answer to, and God truly is the one thing we need urgently. Medgar was dead from a bullet in the back. 4 little beauties in Birmingham. The record was put to wax at Carnegie Hall in New York City, a spotlight on the singer as round and hot as the sun that oversaw a boy's body bob up from the Tallahatchie. In grief and despair, it is the soul that is heavy and the bones that are weightless. Miss Simone bore her soul, birthed a song that was more than song, laid the brunt of blackness on thin waves of air. When Phillips Records sent the single to radio stations across the nation, some were returned with the vinyl broken cleanly in half. I've long wondered if that partition was premeditated, hateful vandalism of the voice, or if it was a moment of art imitating life so precisely that the 45s themselves, sometime during transport, had become Nina's heart. It's important I remember that good artists copy. There was a good one once, working in Vienna. No one of transcendent talent, nobody with a name deserving to be spoken of in reverence, ordinary as a lamppost, blended into the background of the city like charcoal beneath the finger pad. He sketched the movement of the world passing him by in no detail glorious enough that the Academy of Fine Arts saw fit to reward with esteemed instruction. The artist then did as most artists do, hustled in abject obscurity, bouncing between shelters, trying to make scratch from oil paintings and watercolors. There was a friendly Jewish man who purchased works of his regularly, whose money fed the artist's needy body as well as his tumorous sense of shame related to his low social station and inability to articulate beauty, his every creation characterized by coldness, lifelessness. Shame followed the artist to Munich. It followed the artist into the German army and Great War. Shame followed him as if it were a whole other person prone to insecurity. The shame swelled to unfathomable size like flames engulfing an organ of democracy or a crowd with a fever. He was a good artist, not a great one, not on canvas and not on paper, but he had an eye that recognized genius, knew where to search and where to send his party's lawyers to retrieve the statutory stencils to bring back and trace in the Reich, confident that if it can happen in America, it can happen here. It's important I remember that politics is a contact sport. As evidenced by the paraphernalia in his locker, a token of patronage for the President of the United States, a man he and his team's owner are known to be partial to, It sits there in full view of the television cameras, almost pornographic, explicitly read, tattooed with a tagline in white lettering that makes some shiver and others frenzy. Fanatic. The label fan shortens this word or shortens a fuse most certainly. He, the president, said, "Get that son of a bitch off the field," and people exploded into exclamation points while an ancestor took a knee in me. Anthem, anathema. Back when, the outrage dissipated so quickly over their deflating of the football, caught red-handed from applying pressure. But the outrage over deflating the black person's lungs elapsed even faster. Their killer caught red-handed from blood, the phrase's Scottish origin. How funny, then, for all these famous men involved in deadly games to get off scot-free without a substantial tax. How much it hurts, then, that they get to skate and play the hero. Sadly, we're here yet again, the star of star quarterbacks flashing his endorsement smile, teeth purely white after his latest Super Bowl victory. The commentators sing his praises, call him undoubtedly the greatest of all time, the iconic leader of the Patriots, never to be forgotten. I reflect a moment and recall the original Patriot was a black man shot dead by the British in Boston. I reflect a moment and can't recall his name because there have been too many shot dead like him since. At times, I'm heartened hardly anybody outside this country cares about our gridiron game. Always, I'm disheartened less than nobody inside this country cares about us, even though we're sacrificing on that field, taking shots to the torso, to the head, for less than millions, for less than nothing. It's important I remember that darkness and blackness aren't perfect synonyms. But the Venn diagram is a perfect circle. I poke my neck through the hole of comparison like a hula hoop, hoping, under no circumstance, that it ever cuts as close as the collar of the dress shirt hanging in my closet feeding moths a feast in lean times. It is the dead center of summer. We are centering the dead. The dead are everywhere. Surround me. There is the virus and the viral video, and they are not the same. Yet the Venn diagram is a perfect circle. A question is what a ventilator would have done for Mr. Floyd. An answer is what it means to have mercy, to be able to give. A question is why the Lord put his knee on my cousin's neck. An answer is what happens when mercy is not received. A stethoscope and a handcuff both have a radius. They are circles that overlap perfectly around darkness. 8 minutes and 46 seconds is not enough time to say hundreds of thousands of names scratched out in less than a year. The great hoax is the thing that kills us. The pathogen is just an accomplice. The officer is just an accomplice. Blackness encircles my circle. Systemic, systematic, symptom, the syllables slush in my mouth, spike my sugar skyward. They say the sitting president is not the disease, but of the disease. They say the disease is not of the president, but is the president's. The Venn diagram is a perfect circle. My body overlaps hers in bed, both in common need of touch to turn away from ethereal existence. Our aims and anxieties are always in between us, a commonality like our bed. There isn't a crisis I know of that isn't existential, and therefore something beyond what exhausting can describe. The person that feels everything and the person that feels nothing, the Venn diagram is a perfect circle. What they look like isn't what they are, but they are indeed what they look like. It's important, I remember, that Palestinians know our police better than we do, who many of us at times refer to as Popo or 5-0 or 12. They refer to as voyeurs, as trainees come to the Holy Land to learn the arts of surveillance, crowd control, and use of force from deputies graded as savants. Heaven has a ghetto in Gaza. Jesus of Nazareth was executed by the authorities in the West Bank once upon a gospel, after Judas Iscariot snitched about his whereabouts for silver. Where the natives live, boys become men if they're lucky. Otherwise, they grow up to be ghosts their siblings wish would rise again in flesh, as Deja and them did when Mike Brown was put down by the cop, like a gorilla that discovered the joy of smiling. The city rose up from the concrete in a bloom of boom, fires everywhere, little ballads of rage riffing on Baldwin's prescient writings. 911 dialed 911, and tactical units swarmed peopled streets as though an army meeting foreign adversaries at the border of the idea of a nation, building fences with their bodies, shields up, helmets on, masks readied, not sparing property, our anger as action so much as putting a safe space between themselves and what they deserved from those they swear at rather than protect. They served us the gas of grief and wailing, canister after canister, that only folks half a world away from Ferguson could teach us how to cope with as our bodies tried coughing up our very souls and American lies scorched the linings of our lungs. They tweeted advice to us from a prison with a view of a teasing sea, that many of our countrymen on this side of the same cruel coin pay a pretty penny to vacation, unaware of the poems we're passing to one another that would be contraband in hell, as Asada attests. What we wrote with quills plucked from pigeons because the doves fell dead from the sky, darkened by ash and bad intentions, packed to the horizon with helicopters turning circles to stay above us, keeping watch, as well as stationed close to the throne of God, the single we share with our adversaries, like lands none of us engaged in struggle no other than. It's important I remember that exile doesn't promise extrication. The life of James Baldwin, as in so many other ways, is instructive on this matter. In 1986, a year prior to the period of his final sentence, he addressed the National Press Club in D.C., simplifying an anguish that kept him among the living as much as it nearly ended his life on multiple occasions. I was getting out of here. I didn't so much go to Paris as leave New York. With $40 in his pocket and not even enough French to lick a postage stamp. Before he boarded that airplane, there had been disturbances that stirred the ink that stirred the world. Eugene Worth, loved, maybe beloved, though unconfessed, shot the gap between the George Washington Bridge and the Hudson River with the speed of a cannonball, splashing grief against James's singular eyes, the joyous signature of his lips. The disrespects had been as rampant as they were ordinary, the prospects of life in Harlem as grim as Baldwin was black. Before he was no one's Negro, he was everybody's nigger, and rather than break under that burden, he decided to break away to France and found that the City of Lights was not lit up by burning crosses, that his American origin made him no serious threat while strolling along the Seine, but instead a fascination admired at a distance like artwork in the galleries of the Louvre. He was mostly unbothered, in a foreign turn, save for the short stint in jail on a false charge of stealing, levied against a man whose descent from stolen people separated him, psychically, from the Africans he met while living in exile. The relative peace he moved with in Paris was uncomfortable and therefore no peace at all. The translation of nigger into French was not a civilian's word, but a phrase in the language of the state. Algerians, exceedingly poor but proud and percolating, were bloodied in the streets, stuffed in the prisons, tossed soundless into the serenaded river from bridges that vehicles drive and legs walk. Liberty, equality, fraternity. There it was to see so clearly, as with an eagle's bald pupils. It was a brutality one could live in, cozy and familiar, with paper and pen for novels, plays, and essays, a banner of red and white and blue flying atop the famous tower under which lovers kiss. And now, two short ones, and I'll get out of here so we can go to the bonfire. This one's called Blue Sky. Like dazed hummingbirds, many of us flew off our handles after November, flitting our fingers to announce our abandonments of the enabling platform, and the stooges who pay for blue check marks as if pixels add value to opinions. There is another place, some whispered between provocative, performative profanities, a better place, like where one hopes to go when they die. Indeed, I walked with them into the light of a phone screen, free from the clutter of sponsored tweets and photojournalistic dispatches from the epicenter of genocide. This is where the poets live now, I thought in prose, omitting the identifier American in presumption. That avoidance was small compared to the larger one. Us wanting the tidiness of Democrats over the messiness of democracy. All right. And, Nate did a wrestling poem We got a wrestling-inspired lecture coming up. I'm gonna tie some wrestling in here real quick. But it's still serious, though. Still serious, though. Okay. This last one's called Heel Turn. To accomplish the unprecedented, the superheroic John Cena does what we thought unthinkable, aligns with the vile final boss, The Rock, to win a record 17th World Championship, ruthlessly striking the head of the WWE champion, the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, until he bleeds. Even more rough and tumble than the grappling of remarkably muscular men is the grappling of nations reigned over by the smallest men alive. The world's champion of national sovereignty, Vladimir Zelensky, is wholly exhausted from 3 years of war when he lands in D.C. to meet with the man who leads the U.S., but not us of conscience, a man that demeans him, that dresses him down before a sycophantic press for wearing something like a soldier might, not an oligarch from Moscow. One president came seeking help from another to save his proud but dying people, then got kicked in the jewels. America has become his nightmare, the worst genre of dream. America turned its back on its biggest fans, and now all the kids who watched it unfold on TV are crying. Thank you.